No, you're not seeing things, ladies and gentlemen. We are now live, and we're doing something different here. Something different we haven't done here in quite a while. We're talking about all the latest happenings here in the world of Major League Baseball. Taking a little bit of a break for a little bit here right now in the world of the backyard and the underground wrestling circuit, because I'm going to talk about some of the different things going on as we get ready for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Trade deadline is upon us, and I'm going to talk with two of our experts. One of them is the Grim Reaper of Sportswire Radio. Looks like he was probably born when the Grim Reaper was in its heyday. He is also an analyst. He's the longest tenured analyst in Sportswire Radio's history. He talks about the New York Mets and everything else in the world of Major League Baseball. That is Rob Maraska. And also, he is back. He also dealt with some health issues. Glad he's doing much better. I've enjoyed his work recently with the Talking Rivals. He also does some stuff with the Liftoff Jets, and he's taken off with us. He is Chris Bizet. And fellas, long time no speak. I was telling you guys off the air that, really what Sportswire Radio has become is kind of this hub for the backyard, the underground wrestling circuit. It's, been one of those things. Obviously, I think when we get into football season, I think you'll see a lot more of the interest kind of come back. But obviously, wanted to work you guys, and we'll be back on Fridays for the time being. And I think we'll have a lot more to talk about as we get into the peak of the baseball season and everything else going into football. But long time no speak, fellas. And how you doing tonight?
Hey guys, good to see you.
Doing okay?
I'm good. I'm glad to hear that. Obviously, I know for both of you guys being Met and Yankee fans, it's kind of what team's worse. I'm going to go with Chris Bizet first because, the New York Yankees were, I think, the first team to reach 50 wins in Major League Baseball this year. But yet it seems like they might be one of the last teams to make a playoff spot because it's kind of hard to fathom. But the New York Yankees are 4-13 their last 17 games. They got drubbed once again by the Boston Red Sox, got swept by the Cincinnati Reds, and I see my buddy here, Michael Blackhart, who was on Twitch yesterday with me, and he's actually from not too far from Cincinnati. And, we see here the Yankees are struggling. And what is going on with the Yankees? And where do we go from here?
Oh, they're only going down from here. They're in a really bad spot, and this team is dead right now. Tonight was it was their worst loss of the season, without a doubt. Worst loss in a couple of years, actually. This team is dead. I mean, I don't think they're going to fire Boone, but there's got to be some moves coming because this team is going absolutely nowhere and fast. So if they don't make any kind of moves quick, this team is going to miss the playoffs. As stupid as and as crazy as that sounds, after that first couple of months of how good they played, I think this team's going to miss the playoffs if
I want to ask you a question.
Soon.
It's interesting you bring it up, and I'll get to Rob and the Mets story. I know the Mets story more than the Yankees story, but this is the second time in 3 years that Boone seems like, as we start the second half of the Major League Baseball season, that the Yankees struggle and go into a swoon. Obviously you look at social media and X, and there's a lot of different memes out there and different things that have trended, but I mean, why is it different this time than even 2 years ago? Yankees start, I think it was 60-21 2 years ago. Everybody's thinking, oh, this Yankee team's going to go into the World Series. And, they finally kind of do enough to win the American League East, but they obviously fall short against Houston in the League Championship Series. And last year altogether was just 1 year to forget. But why do you think that it's been a constant? And why is this year's Yankees different with their struggles versus other years?
Well, I think it's the same thing. I think a major part of it is that they're building their team around players that are either injury prone or that are just past their prime, right? And it's the same story every year for the past 3 years. They go on they start off great, and then once some injuries happen, it just derails the whole season. And their next men up are just not getting it done. So I think, you could go back to Cashman, how he builds this team. Like this year, he went out and got Soto, which was great. But, the rest of the lineup, you've got Verdugo. He had a great first couple of months, but now he's, not hitting either. I mean, this whole team is not hitting other than Judge and Soto.
And the ironic part of it, you're relying on Stanton to be back in the lineup. I hear the end of the month, and that's what's going to save this team is Giancarlo Stanton.
And I said before the season, whatever Stanton gives you is a bonus. So he shouldn't have been the guy that, oh my God,
he's
mentioned
gonna, it this week. I was listening to it on sportswireradio.org, our internet radio station. I'll put the link up for it in a second. But that this is what you're relying on, Stanton. And this is just such a top heavy lineup again. Here we go again. It's just Judge and Soto. Last year, Judge was out. and the lineup folds. And now this year it's Stanton, and the lineup is swooning in, quite a bit in a few short weeks.
And you know what? After last year, how bad Stanton was, I wasn't expecting anything much from him. So that's why I said anything he gave us this year was a bonus. And he was really good this year, which was awesome. But the rest of the team has to get the job done. Volpe's not getting the job done. Verdugo's not getting the job done. Torres, everybody but Judge and Soto is not getting it done. So, I mean, something has to happen now. And Cashman can't just sit back and say, all right, you know what? We're going to wait a couple more weeks until Stanton comes back because he's going to save the day. No, you got to make moves because you got Soto for 1 year, guaranteed. Anything is possible. What's going to happen?
Point. I want to come back to that. I want to get to Rob, but I know the Mets story. I don't think much of the Mets. Sorry to put it that way. But we'll talk about that. And I want to bring up the Boston Red Sox because my buddy DG Colt, who obviously is always with me, and thank you, DG, for your support. Although I think sometimes he likes what I say, sometimes he doesn't like what I say, but that's the beauty of wrestling. That's why we love DG, and he's been doing so many great things out there, logo work and many other things. But the Boston Red Sox have played some great ball over the past month or so. And, he's not wrong. Don't look now, but the Boston Red Sox are only, 4 games behind the Yankees? And the way this series continues, I mean, the Yankees are going to, like you kind of talked about, they're going to have to worry about holding off teams like the Twins and even the Kansas City. Not supposed to be after the way the Yankees started this season. What do you think on that?
Oh, I totally agree. I think Boston's a really good team. And you know what? They're probably going to add to their team as well at the trade deadline. Excuse me.
I know the Yankees are choking right now. You're emulating the Yankees choke job.
That's me. Yeah, exactly. But I like Boston, man. If Boston could add maybe some pitching because Tanner Houck maybe has finally hit his innings limit, because his last 2 starts have not been good. But we'll see if he could bounce back. But I like Boston. Boston's a good team. I think they're going to be a playoff team this year.
I think they've been a mild surprise, don't you think? This year they've been a mild surprise. I know people were saying, 500, but I think right now the way it's looking, I mean, Boston's, in a good spot. And I think that, guys like DG Cole could be very happy. I'm going to shout out TBK in a second. We'll certainly get to the Orioles story. But I think Boston right now is in a really good spot right now. And with the Yankees free falling.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think Boston is definitely heading for the playoffs with how they're playing and with whatever moves they make at the deadline, because I'm sure they will make some kind of move. They're playing really good. They're a really good team. They're getting pitching. They're a team that could run a little bit too with stealing bases, something that, Red Sox are not really known for.
No, Red Sox have never been, really known for that.
But I like the team, man. They look really good, and they made, even with the mistakes they made tonight, they should have lost if they were playing against a team that, were not trying to kill themselves too. So the Yankees just gave them that game, just like Boston was giving them the game. The Yankees were giving it right back, and it's just embarrassing right now how the Yankees are playing, and Boston is taking full advantage because right now they're playing their best ball. So
absolutely no question about it. And Rob Moroska, obviously good to see you. And, the Mets again, Mets obviously were dead in the water, had a great run, but I kind of think I'm looking at the Mets and where I'm going to look at if this season kind of, sputters is last weekend. Houston, you're up 5-0. You wind up losing the game. Actually, you're up 6-1. You come back and Houston wins, and the Mets bullpen falters. Even the Yankee game the week prior, the Yankees kind of almost come back. Mets still find a way to get some runs. And then I look at the next day, the Mets are down, come back, a weird rain delay. Houston scores a bunch of runs. But then I look at also the game against Washington. Wednesday, you're up big. But I'm going to look at, though, for this Met team, should the Mets sputter back to irrelevancy, I'm going to go back to last week and at home against Houston. You had them down in the count. You had them on the ropes. You let Houston come back. And that's kind of where this Mets team is kind of, sputtering. And give me your thoughts on that and where they go from here.
Yeah, well, it's it's the bullpen because the Mets had an excellent June. Okay, they led the National League in runs scored with 153. They had the best record in the National League for June. But the problem is the bullpen. The problem is that Diaz suspension because it started to look like he was starting to come back after going down and pitching and fixing himself, and then the suspension really killed them. because the bullpen could not hold most of those leads. They held the one against the Yankees.
It was a Padres game. They were up big, and they held on to that. And, the Padres, they get a bunch of runs to at least catch the Houston. I think, to me, the Houston's one is the one I'm going to look back on this season. And should they kind of sputter and fall out of this, that's the game to me. You got to have that game. You're up, you're in firm control, and you lose that game. And, then they lose another game kind of in a reverse way on Sunday. And then the game against Washington, you're in cruise control, and you find a way to lose that one late. And, you get blown out today. And I just think you can't lose those games. And it all starts, to me, really with the game last week with Houston.
Yeah, because they were starting to gel as a team. I mean, they looked like they were having fun again. And I have to give that credit to two things. Martinez really, he got those guys hitting again. All right. Whatever was said in that clubhouse meeting worked for June. And also Alvarez, that's one thing for the future. He's
got 14 home runs, 40 plus RBI. So you've established that you've got a hitter in the catching position. And, Martinez has played well, and there's no question about that. But he's on a 1-year deal. Obviously, yep. I'll get to the Yankee side of it. So this Met team is 3.5 back. So they're 3.5 back of the wild card. Still very much in it, but you've got a lot of games coming up against teams that you need to beat. So where is this team in all of this?
Well, that's the thing. They are right on the line. So are you going to be buyers or sellers? I guess we have to wait till after the All-Star game. We have to see how this last week is, and then the first week back, and what they're going to do. But yeah, they lost some games that they should have won. And I agree with you. I'm going to look back at that Houston series, especially that rain delay game.
You come back, you tie it, and then lose it in extra innings. But even Tuesday's game. But I think that's the problem with this team is that obviously its bullpen is its Achilles heel, and Diaz didn't have a great year. Sure, maybe he was playing a little bit better going into the injury, but this is a team that you can't win, especially if you're blowing 5. You can't hold 5-run leads, 4-run leads. They ain't going anywhere.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, you got to hold those leads. The bullpen is horrible, and we'll just have to see what happens. Diaz is coming back. Let's see what we get with him, and just take it from there.
So I'll come back to you but going back to you, Chris, I'll get to some comments, and I want to get to a few people to say hello. But, you talk about the Yankees, Chris, and you talk about the deadline. I mean, Boston's going to make some moves. I would imagine there'll be a few other teams that'll figure it out. Right now, looking at the American League, teams that I would say that are definitely out of it. Obviously, Oakland, Chicago, Angels, and then you're starting to see where teams like Detroit, Toronto, probably out of it. I would say Detroit's probably more likely of a seller than Toronto. Toronto might want to, I guess, stand pat just because, again, it's a big market team that's obviously going to have decisions in the offseason. Then you have teams like Tampa Bay who, come back a little bit. They're at 500. They're probably like the Mets, kind of waiting out. So judging the landscape in the American League with, some of these teams definitely out of it. Right. Some other teams trying to figure out where they are. So what do the Yankees do?
Well, I think the Yankees got to get bullpen help without a doubt, right? That's been really bad lately. And they need a couple of bats because even with Stanton coming back, I know everybody's like, well, once he comes back, everything will be great. They still need more than even with Stanton coming back. So I think they need some kind of an infielder, whether it's, I think first base is okay with Ben Rice, but maybe a third baseman because DJ LeMahieu looks like he's toast, like he's done. I mean, he can't even get it out of the infield right now. So I think, getting a corner guy would be awesome. Second base too. I mean, Torres is just horrendous, and he's in his free agency year, so you got to feel bad for the kid. But they need a bat, at least 1 or 2 bats as well, along with bullpen help, because I mean, right now the team is just dead, and they need to make moves because this team, like I said, is not going to make the playoffs right now the way they are. So.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. I mean, Kansas City, right, would be, I think, the last wild card spot. And you know, you really
It's
can't.
unbelievable.
Yankees are the way they're playing. I mean, based on this body of work, I mean, yeah, they're going to struggle to. As crazy as it sounds, go 86 wins or something like that.
I know. Forget about the division because the Orioles are they're taking off. I mean, that's a really good team. And if they add any kind of pitching, because that's all they need, the Orioles right now is some pitching. If they add pitching, forget it. They're going to be unstoppable this year. And if you look on the other side, you look at Houston. Houston's
starting to come back. Yep, we knew that. Houston's
and Texas is going to get healthy, so they're going to be better.
Yeah, Texas. I think because they're the World Series winners, they're not going to sell anyway.
No, they're definitely not going to sell. Seattle needs bats. Seattle's got good pitching, but I really don't like their lineup.
Seattle, had a weird offseason. We talked about them during the offseason. Didn't really, didn't have a great offseason. A team that's obviously always in the same situation. They're always kind of right on the edge or right out of a playoff spot. And they've been in first place most of the year in the American League West, but everybody's been waiting for Houston to come back. And Houston now look like they're finally about to kind of maybe make a move. So I think that's obviously something to look for. But, I mean, the Yankees have to figure out, is there somebody you're targeting that you would think that could help this team, kickstart where they are right now?
I mean, right now it's going to come down to who's available, right? I think that's going to be the bigger thing. Like you said, there's still a lot of teams that are still in the playoff race, so they're not going to, they're not going to sell yet. But you got to hope that if let's say if the Cubs become sellers, then maybe Bellinger becomes an option, right? Because he's on a 1-year deal. If San Francisco becomes sellers, maybe Matt Chapman for third base. A lot of people were mentioning Ryan McMahon from the Rockies, but I don't think the Rockies are going to make that move because he's actually signed to a pretty good deal, a team-friendly deal. So.
You almost have to think you got to have some players, right? I mean, you're in a situation where, you got to have somebody, right?
They got to do something. I'm telling you, the Yankees right now are just a dead team. I mean, just dead. There's just no effort in the team.
San Francisco, I think, is a team that's an interesting one you brought up, but they are in it, but they really, I think, considering the landscape, have to have had a disappointing season. Let me get to some comments here. And also, this is our website, Sportzwire Radio. If you want to hear some of these podcasts, I know some people are kind of like, where's the backyard in the underground wrestling circuit? Well, we will have that talk, I can promise you, tomorrow night. But we wanted to get some of the guys and some of the podcasters who are here via our internet radio station. You can always check us out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We play podcasts, whether it's baseball, football talk, hockey. We have a lot of wrestling talk, obviously. We just had one of our shows, the Squared Circle radio show, just interviewed WWE announcer and commentator Brian Saxton. Obviously, huge to have had Byron Saxton here. That was a great honor that those guys had also. We have different things, music. We play live music throughout the week. It's an internet radio station. So if you have a podcast out there, you'd like to hear yourself, it's free of charge. I do that on behalf of the community. We give people an opportunity to kind of give themselves some confidence and skills. And that is our internet radio station. It is sportswireradio.org. And it's via the Listen Live button. Also, if you want to watch us go back down memory lane, we're on YouTube at the Watch Now button. Also, Listen Live. It actually takes you to the actual link. It's an actual radio link. And you can actually hear us right now. For whatever reason, you don't want to see our mugshots, you can listen to us anytime and all the great shows. Listen, obviously, everybody knows that I'm on the air pretty much every day right now on Sportswire Radio. And we're actually getting close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and that's while people kind of see us. But if they don't want to see on YouTube, they can check us out via the internet radio. And also, if you want to go back down memory lane and see some of the shows on YouTube, you can. And also, if you want to check out our roster of some of our shows that we have here in the world of sports and everything else in between, you can see all of them here. You got a bunch of shows. TBK is on there, though he hasn't done a show in a while. We kept it up. We have shows like the Squared Circle Radio, Pinstripe Chronicles. You got also Talking Rivals. Chris is a host of that, co-host. Liftoff Jets as well. Randy Dillon, who's back with us next week. Hockey Fan Chat, Devil's State of Mind. So a bunch of great shows out there. If you want to have your show join the rotation, you can message me anytime. Let me get to a bunch of comments here. Not as many, though, as what we're used to. Zilla, who's our resident bot of Sportswire Radio, says, hello, Tom, again. Want to say hello to my buddy, Mr. Michael Blackheart, also a part of XCW in beautiful Shelbyville, Indiana, despite what Atomic Titan might have said. But hello again, Rev. Thank you for the support last night. Sportswire Radio is the greatest. Players are stuck in the head game. Happens this time of year. TBK, our old friend, would like to say, there they are. Glad to see the OGs of Sportswire back. Wouldn't be me if I didn't give a huge shout out to Rushman and Henderson for getting the starting spots on the All-Star team. Absolutely, Orioles, as Chris mentioned, might be the best team in baseball, at least in the American League. Phillies and Orioles. Kind of interesting there. That's the rivalry right down the road from each other. Joe Dell, who is also on TikTok now, says, Rib Maraska eats blueberries to make moves. Do you eat blueberries for helping your bowel movements? Is that what he's trying to tell us right now or what?
I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, he had a birthday recently. Happy birthday, Joe Dell. Well, happy birthday to the legendary Joe Dell.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Did Joe hit the big 5-0, I think, right? Did he hit 5-0 today?
He hit the big 5-1.
Okay. He hit the 5. I thought it was 50. I don't know why I had 50 on Facebook, but happy birthday for Joe Tell. Obviously, Joe has been a big supporter, a big OG listener. He used to listen to the shows with his breakfast. He was listening to us during the old days on SoundCloud.com, and he would go out and listen with his breakfast. So I appreciate Joe. I don't think he's listening now with his breakfast. He's probably just watching, and maybe he's the one eating blueberries. And yes, and right there with you, Rob, or Grim, whichever you prefer. Bats may be hot in Baltimore, but our Achilles heel has been and continues to be pitching. 3 starters out, done for the season, not good. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this is the time of year in baseball. It's attrition, injuries, and, it's a tough thing. I want to come back to the Orioles, but thank you, Joe, for your support. All right, so, Rob, Mets, we talked about the Yankee side, but, Mets, I guess Martinez is a free agent. He's a big chip. And there's this other guy named Alonso. That's a big chip. But I guess if you could say, look, Senga's back around the corner. Diaz is coming back. Mets have played well enough that, you could probably still hang in there. But so what are you doing then if you're the Mets? I mean, you're waiting, obviously, I would imagine. But if you hypothetically are going to buy with this team, you're adding what? Bullpen help and maybe one more batter, starter? What are you doing?
Yeah, well, definitely. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Quintana too, because I don't know. He's having a really bad year.
The other day, but yeah, by and large, he's having a bad
year. That's true. The other day he did pitch well, but the Mets, the National League is pretty weak. We know that.
Absolutely.
So right now, the Mets have a chance to make the playoffs. So I don't think they should be sellers now. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the month, if they're really going to stink it up or if they're going to hit. I mean, when they gel together, they could hit.
Well, they were coming off a great run. They just won 16-21. I mean, you had a great run to go out there and
Yeah, they were hitting. I mean, they were hitting home runs. They were scoring runs. They weren't.
The lineup was fine up until Thursday. I mean, up until yesterday, the lineup I think was doing fine. I just think it's like you said, the bullpen's really been the Achilles heel of this team all season long. I think that's really where this Met team has found a problem, more or less.
And so many teams need bullpen help too. Yeah. I mean, it's just the whole Major League Baseball right now. Bullpens are terrible for the most part. I mean, I can't believe how bad it is. It's just the Mets need bullpen help, another hitter. They have to figure out, what? Now I think, I don't think Brett Beatty's gonna stay with the Mets. I think they're gonna use him as trade bait, maybe, because where are they gonna put him?
Well, you got Vientos right back up, our old friend Ernest Dove, who's obviously the prospect hugger. Vientos has been up and down here. You obviously Beatty, that's been a topic. Alvarez has obviously picked it up. I mean, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. The lineup's been, I think, for the most part, these last, 30 games, 25, 30 games, been pretty good.
Yeah.
But, like you said, everybody in baseball needs bullpen help. Right now you're looking at it in the National League. You started to see some distance between teams. St. Louis, I think, has been a big surprise. Right? St. Louis has had a great run these last several weeks. They're in the second wild card spot. Atlanta's pretty much been locked in, but Atlanta's been dealing with injuries. They've kind of come back to earth considerably the past 30 or 40 games since Acuna's been out. Padres have played pretty well since they played the Mets. San Francisco, Chris talked about, a team that made a lot of moves in the offseason, but, has been underwhelming. The Diamondbacks are another team, underwhelming. But, again, 3 games back only. The Mets, with the hot streak, 3.5 back. Then you got these teams like, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Washington, that are, 4, 4.5, 5.5, and the Cubs are kind of probably the make or break moment. So, I mean, where do you think these teams go then, Rob? Some of these teams, Cincinnati gets a sweep of the Yankees. Pittsburgh's a team that's kind of been pretty much at the same spot the entire year. Washington's been a mild surprise. They were 500 a few weeks ago, come back to earth a little bit. And, I think the team to me that I'm glaring at is the bigger disappointment. Really, the two of them are the Cubs and the D-backs. I think everybody was high on both those teams, and those are the teams on the outside looking, especially the Cubs.
Yeah, really. And the D-backs, really, what happened to the D-backs? I didn't expect this. They only have 43 wins.
43 and 44, yep.
Yeah, they're one game under 500.
And San Diego's up big over them right now, so take probably another game in the standings that'll put them down. So
look at what the D-backs. Look at Corbin Carroll, like how good he was last season. And look at his stats this season. That you could just look right there. But I think the D-backs are gonna. I think they're gonna have a better second half. That's a team I would watch for the second half because I think they're getting. They just got Zach Gallen back. I think they're going to get Wadro Rodriguez back. So eventually, I think that's a team. We've seen what they could do last year. Like I think they'll bounce back a little bit.
Yeah, I think the Diamondbacks, based on some of those things, you would think, but the Giants to me were a team that made just a lot of moves, and
Well, one of their moves is out for the year, right? What's his name? The center fielder that they signed from Korea.
Yeah, I couldn't even pronunciate his name. Yeah, but I think the name that I'm thinking about that's been a major bust is the guy that a lot of people avoided. That was Blake Snell. I mean, what a bust has he been? I mean, everybody was screaming that the Mets should get him. Everybody was screaming the Yankees should look at him. And, I mean, this guy you wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
No.
Yeah,
definitely not.
The Mets and Yankees are lucky they didn't sign him. So,
oh yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the Giants are the one that took the bait there, and that's kind of where we're at. Just some other scores now before I get to some more comments. Texas beats Tampa 3-0. Royals lose to the Rockies. Royals are kind of in a weird spot. They had a great start to the season. Coming back to earth a little bit, you have to wonder what they do. Rockies get a win 4-2. Houston, Minnesota. No, we're not talking about the Texans and the Vikings. It was 13-12 Houston over Minnesota. Mariners, Blue Jays 2-1. Mariners are ahead, though, going to the bottom of the 8th. We mentioned the Padres over the Diamondbacks 7-2. Orioles and A's 3-2. TBK's got to be happy about that going to the bottom of the 8th. Brewers, Dodgers 5-4 could be a playoff preview. I think Brewers have been a very interesting team because the Brewers, everybody kind of wrote them off and they, obviously sell some players, but they've kind of been the benefits of the weak National League Central. I think teams like Cincinnati were disappointing. Certainly the Cubs, Pittsburgh still kind of maybe a year away. Mets obviously got to see one of those big stars that they have coming up, though, that I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to. Phillies beat the Braves 8-6. Tigers beat the Reds 5-4. So much for the Reds sweep. Giants do beat the Guardians today. Guardians have obviously played really well, but those are things to keep an eye on. Cardinals beat the Nationals, and Pirates 14, Mets 2. Almost sounds like a Steelers-Jets game there, but I won't bring that up quite yet. Maybe I'll bring that up in about 6 weeks from now. We're still, as crazy as it sounds, we're still weeks away from football, but we're close enough to football. But I'm kind of wanting to stay in July still. So those are, obviously some of the things there. Let me get to some comments. And if you want to follow Chris, that's his X. It's now X, not Twitter. And also Rob's we had up earlier before. So check the guys out and we'll have some more comments. Want to say hello to my buddy who's going to be with us here coming up, I think, in the next week. As a matter of fact, I might be seeing you very soon over there from Breakout Pro Wrestling, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you're doing also in FAPW and seeing hello, how are you? And he's happy for now, at least. Kano has been shaky here lately when it comes to the Orioles. Also shows as well, because he does obviously the Be More Talkative podcast. And he also is saying his computer is out of the commission. Yep, he was telling me about that. And he hopes to be back soon. Yeah, I think really we got really a bunch of weeks. I'm sure you'll see us more on Fridays. We'll be here. Usually the regular guys are here at about 11 o'clock Eastern time, 10 o'clock Fridays. We'll do SmackDown. We'll do Raw, do some of the different things in the world. And please know Jets talk. Well, people are optimistic on the Jets this year. We're going to obviously talk about the Jets. We're going to pick all the games and such. But definitely hope TBK is back. And the Mets need a lineup equivalent to the 80-16. But the lineup hasn't been that bad, though. But the lineup, to me, hasn't been that bad. I don't think the Mets' problem, I think the Mets' problem is what a lot of teams have, and that's the bullpen. I think that's why the Mets are where they are. The Yankees' problem might be the lineup a little bit, but I think for the Mets, it's really, they're like everybody else right now. Listen, baseball, I think the moral of the story for you gentlemen is that this is what baseball wanted. They added an extra wild card, and you got all these teams that are mired in mediocrity, and they get into the playoffs, and they all of a sudden think, hey, you know what? I can go deep into the playoffs. Case in points, the Phillies and the D-backs. I mean, these are two teams with a National League wild card, last ones. They get into the bracket the last 2 years, and the Phillies go to the World Series. The Diamondbacks go and follow suit, and the Phillies also, made the playoffs last year and as a wild card, and could have been in the World Series again. So to me, this is what baseball wanted. You could have a team win 83, 84 games and make the playoffs and maybe make the World Series.
You know what? I think what baseball has to do now is, now that they've got the extra wild card, I think they got to push the trade deadline back a couple of weeks, because I think July 31st might be a little bit too soon, because teams are going to still be in it by the end of this month.
So what's the date you go with? The old waiver was August 31st, and they took away from the waivers.
Right.
So, if you clear waivers, you could be on a roster in September and be cleared for postseason eligibility. But they took that away, and they made everything July 31st for postseason eligibility. So what's the date for you guys? Is it August 15th is the middle ground? That way it gives you, 6 weeks until the regular season ends? 6.5 weeks?
Yeah, I think so. I think
just so that,
because I think it's just too soon, this trade deadline. I mean, by the end of the month, I mean, how many teams are really going to be totally out of it where you're like, all right, we got no shot?
I would say,
a lot of these teams, a lot of these teams are going to be like, all right, we're still kind of in it. Like the Mets, even if they're 5 games out, let's say, of a wild card spot, you're still in it, right? I mean, 5 games out on July 31st is not bad.
No, I think, and I think you're not, because you have decisions with free agents. I don't think you're going to all of a sudden, you did it last year. It was understood when you sold Verlander, you had Verlander and Scherzer, you understood that because the team didn't feel anywhere. But I think this year, because of the openness in the National League, maybe you decide you've played better enough. Whereas going into the deadline, the Mets really weren't going anywhere. They had a nice run early in the end of April last year, but for the most part, they were mired in, pretty much poor play. This team, had a really good stretch, and maybe you feel good enough about that. But, Rob, I'm curious about a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we saw Paul Skeens, and he pitched a hell of a game tonight, and maybe that's a reason why the Pittsburgh Pirates might feel like they could be a team to keep an eye on.
Listen, that kid is exciting, right? I mean,
and his girlfriend's very exciting for those that are out there that might want to check out who his girlfriend is. I think guys might want to hear me talk about that because they're used to that when we do the wrestling talk. I might, drop some of those references, but his girlfriend is definitely somebody you might want to look at. Just look around.
Sure.
Oh yeah, but he's filling the stadium up. It's a good thing for Pittsburgh.
They've been down for a while. The Pirates, it's a franchise that hasn't had anything.
See them try to add a bat, just to try to.
I was listening to MLB radio over the past couple of weeks, and I was listening to Steve Phillips, obviously the ex-Met GM, and Eduardo Perez, and then they had Xavier Scruggs, and they were talking about the Pirates as a team that, you got a young team. Maybe you're 1 year away, but maybe you add somebody this year because. You got a young pitcher that's come in here 5-0, pitched really well. You got some really good bats right now starting to heat up. And maybe you make a move and maybe you sneak into the playoffs. And the Diamondbacks were an example last year, right? Young team gets into the playoffs and, gets hot on a run and goes to a World Series. Maybe that's a kind of team that maybe people should pay attention to more than, some of these big market clubs.
Yeah, what? They got the pitching, right? Not just Snell. You got that kid Jones, the other young pitcher. You got Mitch Keller there as well, who's really good. So, I mean, they got good starting pitching, and we know if you got good starting pitching, you're going to be in every game, right? Then you got to worry about the bullpen. Like you said, most teams could always use an extra bullpen piece or two. I think everybody's in that boat, but I would love to see Pittsburgh go after a bat, because that's what they need
today for them, right? He had a big night for them tonight.
Yeah, I mean, tonight they scored a lot of runs, but normally they're not much of a high scoring team. I mean, other than Brian Reynolds they really don't got much on.
And he had a big night tonight. He's got 50 something RBIs, and maybe you add a bat with him, and that gives them something to look forward to, because it's a team that offensively is challenged, but you make a move and that could maybe jolt them. You got the pitcher coming up in here, you maybe that helps him. You got McCutcheon still. McCutcheon's there, and he's got that veteran leadership he's providing for them, and it's a team that could be an interesting team to watch up forward in these next few weeks.
Plus, they have not won a World Series since 1979.
Right. So why not go for it? Right?
Yeah, those fans are aching, and it would be good to see Pittsburgh get into the postseason.
Well, I think there's a lot of teams that haven't won. TBK's Orioles haven't won since '80.
Well, yes,
obviously,
that's true.
The Mets '86. I mean, listen, the Mariners have never won a World Series. I mean, there's a lot of markets. The Padres have never won a World Series. That's a team that's been going for it, though. To be fair, that's a team that has been going for it.
Right.
And,
They're trying.
They've been trying, and they haven't got there. The Phillies, did win a World Series in 2008, got back to the World Series last year. They're obviously have gone all in. I mean, there are, a lot of teams that are in it that, obviously haven't won in a while. I mean, when I bring up the usual suspects, the Yankees, the Cardinals, the Red Sox that have won, but in a team like Milwaukee hasn't won, and they've been, a pretty consistent postseason team. We know the Cubs history, right? Only the one World Series in the modern era, almost like a miracle. Almost, it's like them and the Rangers in hockey, right? The Rangers, win the one cup in 80 something years, and the Cubs have the one World Series in 100 and almost 15 years. So it's those are some teams to look out for. And Joe Dell would like to say back when he was wrestling, they called me the fart break kid. Well, that's obviously something we're not going to talk about on this platform, because obviously you certainly may not be confused with anybody but that. I kind of know the pun intended on that, but I'm going to move on. But, obviously, we'll talk a little bit more on the show next week in terms of, baseball all-star game. But are you guys excited about that? I mean, obviously, we'll see. I'm sure some players. TBK was talking about a couple of Orioles getting into the game. You guys excited about? I feel like I ask you guys this question every year we've been on the air, but this year coming up, any interest or nah?
Well, you want to know something?
I want to know.
I don't like Chris. They're gonna still do what they did last year with the uniforms, right?
Yeah, it's bad. They look really
I hate
bad.
that.
Too.
Yeah, I hate that. I'm gonna tell you, Tom. I hate that.
I'm with you.
I think there's no need for it in baseball. It's not like hockey. It's not like basketball, football, where they can't tell. With all the different uniforms, they won't know who's who. Baseball's different. I don't like it. I think it's stupid. I think one of the best parts of baseball, the baseball all-star game, was that they wore their own uniform. So it's just, I don't like it.
I'm with you 100% on that. I wish they would go back to it. And to make it even worse, their uniforms are just awful, that they're making. So
we see everybody's talking about these city jerseys. I know, obviously, we're all choking about the Yankees and Mets right now, but I mean, everybody seems to be complaining on social media about these city jerseys.
Oh, the City Connect. Yeah, most of them have been misses. There's been a couple of pretty good ones out there, but for the most part, they've been bad. I don't know if you guys like the Mets one, but I'm praying that the Yankees don't make one, because I know it just won't come out good.
They don't need to. The Yankees, again, them and the Red Sox, the Cubs, they don't need to. And the Dodgers, they don't need to make any jersey but the classic, logo there. So all-star game jerseys are a dud. The game itself takes place next Tuesday. It's kind of the midway point of the season, although we're actually past the midway point.
I look forward to it. I mean, I like the home run derby. That's kind of fun. And they're adding a little bit this year with the prospects. Yep. So that's kind of cool. And you know what? The All-Star game is usually it is the best All-Star game of all the major sports.
Yeah, the football game, to me, it's like I don't even know why they have it.
Yeah, that's a waste.
The NBA, I'm very up and down on the NBA game, more down. Hockey has tried, but I don't.
They tried different things. You're right.
Yeah, they've tried. I mean, in certain years have gotten into the NHL game. I kind of like the efforts of the world versus everybody else, and doing it the different ways. But yeah, I think baseball's was always important because it's the Midsummer Classic. It's the one sport where there's nothing else there. you'd watch it, but I don't
Right.
know if the All-Star games also have the same meaning because, back when you'd watch the All-Star games, even like 20 years ago or so, you didn't have as many streaming services. You didn't have as many cable outlets that showed baseball. So like if you're
Right.
watching, or even like the other sports, if you're watching the NBA All-Star game, the NHL game, certainly for sure, and then, the MLB All-Star game, Pro Bowl was always kind of, it's at a, I don't know, football can never, it's very hard for football to get an All-Star game really right because it's where you put it. But like, I think with those sports, because you didn't watch a lot of these players often,
Right.
maybe you watched them when they played your team, it meant something. But now I think because you have so many ways to watch these players, I don't know if it has the same meaning. And a lot of these guys don't want to play. And
that,
things.
And also I think interleague play has ruined what you're talking about too.
Took a lot of that, yeah.
Yes, but both of those reasons. I mean, when I was a kid, that's when you got to see the stars, because you only got here. We got to see the Mets and the Yankees. That's it. And then you got to see, Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, Willie Stargell. You got to see all the stars. Yeah. And that's one thing. And they wanted to play and win, like
Pete guys Rose now, they don't want to play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, what Pete Rose did to Ray Fosse, man.
Right.
He ruined his career in an All-Star game.
Yeah.
So that's how it used to be.
I wanted to ask you guys, because obviously it's been a while since we've been on the air with the regular guys, and I wanted to ask you guys just your thoughts on the passing of Willie Mays. Obviously, Willie Mays, some consider to be the greatest Major League Baseball player of all time. Obviously, was the greatest living player, maybe one of the greatest living athletes. I mean, obviously, certainly up there with the likes of Michael Jordan, obviously Tom Brady. People would talk about Wayne Gretzky. I mean, I'm sure there's other athletes you could throw in there in the other sports. But, what did the passing of Willie Mays mean to you guys?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I actually got to see Willie Mays play. He was a Met, and,
I was hearing Howie Rose talk about that.
Yeah, but in 1970, the first Major League Baseball game that I went to was the Mets against the Padres at Shea in 1972, and I got to see Willie Mays play, which was a thrill for me because Willie Mays, listen,
I was listening, right? Willie Mays got traded on Mother's Day. Was it Mother's Day 72? I think I read.
And then his first at bat as a Met, he hit a home run. Willie Mays was, if not the greatest, I mean, Babe Ruth, but if not the greatest, one of the greatest.
Well, they say all around in terms of he was the first 5-tool player because he obviously 30-30 guy, he obviously 600 plus home runs, 300 lifetime hitter. I mean, he could throw, he could run, he was the say hey kid. Obviously Babe Ruth's impact in terms of being an attraction is unbelievable. But I think a lot of people look at Mays and, obviously Bonds would be maybe a guy that surpassed him, but because of, steroids, people kind of take him out. Griffey certainly, I think, had a chance, but he had too many injuries. I've heard people talk about obviously Hank Aaron. You could throw him in there. Pujols might be offensively somebody that could be up there. I don't know though if I'd put him.
Mays is definitely on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah,
I think it's hard to put. I hate to put one guy over the, because they didn't play against each other. They played in different eras. So it's hard to say, well, Babe Ruth was better than Willie Mays, because Willie Mays was easily the greatest center fielder of all time. Greatest
no doubt.
Right. Babe
I loved
Ruth,
Willie Mays.
Right. Babe Ruth wasn't the greatest fielder out there. You know what I mean? Maybe one of the greatest hitters.
I think he was the greatest attraction. I think in attraction. I mean, I don't know if he's the greatest.
He grew the game.
And remember, Willie Mays lost some time in the service too.
Yep.
I mean, other guys did, but think about it. His home run total.
And I think he played briefly in the Negro Leagues too, right? Didn't he play very briefly in the Negro Leagues?
That's where he started, when he was young. And think about it too. Willie Mays played in horrible conditions, right?
Oh, Candlestick. Oh my goodness.
Imagine if he played, in a little bit better park. Maybe his numbers.
Chris, one thing, because I heard an interview with him years ago. He used Candlestick Park and that win to his advantage. He was a very smart player, and he said he used that to his advantage. I think
there's a point to be made though. Candlestick, for those that don't remember, the San Francisco Giants played there until 1999. I mean, that was just which the 49ers played there as well. That was a horrible. I mean, that was one of
windy, cold.
Right?
That was the era of bad baseball stadiums that were built.
Yeah,
Candlestick. You look at obviously Riverfront Stadium. Three Rivers Stadium. Those multi-purpose Olympic Stadium. Obviously, they spend so much. The Vet. Even Shea wasn't great. The Shea wasn't great.
I love Shea though, but
I know, but you haven't met the diehard Met. But like really, like in terms of like being a ballpark. Shea wasn't great. I mean, really, that was the era. I mean, I know Candlestick was before those parks, but like he played in a tough park. That was really like, just it was those Bulls would die out there. Candlestick, Riverfront. Shea wasn't. They made Shea a better park. It became a neutral park at the end of its existence, but Shea was easily a pitcher's park up until the last 10, 15 years of the ballpark. Then they changed the conditions a little bit, but those were the era of parks that would just the ball would die, and you could make the case maybe he would have hit 750, 800 home runs because of where he played. I mean, he played in tough conditions, especially for those 14, 15 years he played in San Francisco.
Yeah, they used to say there's no winter colder than summer in San Francisco. So that tells you
San Francisco, it's like, we're here in New York and it's like 90 degrees with like 100% humidity. In San Francisco, it's probably like, I was hearing somebody talk about it, 60 or put 60 degrees with a coat on. But at least you can look at it and say, well, that's San Francisco 24/7, 365 year round. Whereas here in New York, we get a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Anything for you else you guys want to add on Willie Mays before I get to a couple comments?
You know what? I just love the stories about him when he was playing for the Giants in New York, and wherever he lived, he would go out and play with the kids.
I heard about that.
I thought that was great. When you heard stuff like that. I mean, there was a great documentary. I think it was on HBO. That it was on Willie Mays. Definitely check it out if you get a chance.
You should have heard the story. It was Chris Spire who played for the Giants, a bunch of other teams. And he was talking about his first trip up to Manhattan in New York. He didn't have like a lot of clothes, and Willie Mays happened to know all of the people in which is Manhattan. We have a thing called the Garment District, which is a lot bigger than what it used to be, but it's in kind of in Manhattan. I guess you want to say it's somewhere in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken, in the upper 20s in Manhattan. And, he wound up going there, and he got all the shopkeepers to give this guy, Chris Spire, so many, pieces of clothes that he wound up using it for his kids till they went to graduate high school. And that was the kind of things that he did, even though this guy, Chris Spire, young guy coming in, but Willie Mays asked him to go out with him, and they went out, and he got him clothes, and that really helped because he was a young player making no money. Because in those days, you're talking like 70, 71. They weren't making the salaries they make today. Minimum salary was nothing. I think it was also fascinating. I heard that Willie Mays was during the offseason, he was working as a promotional spokesman up until, I guess, toward the end of his career because he made more money as a promotional guy than as a player during those days.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, now minimum wage is like $1 million. It's crazy.
Well, that's why they're there and we're here. Let me get to a few more comments. From Baseball All-Star Game is the best. They should wear their team colors. Always look forward to them when I was a kid. Yeah, I mean, I think every sport does it for different reasons. Every sport has, their kind of, things as to why they do things. Obviously, money, advertisements, sponsors. It's kind of the way.
It's always money. You know that, right?
Yeah,
well, listen, I mean, look at baseball, right? All the other sports, NBA has a play-in tournament, college football for my buddy, my hardcore king, Atomic Titan, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame here for a second time. College football is adding more into the BCS. College football has these bowl games that are like, I don't even know why they play them, but $500,000 to $1 million is showing up. And,
money.
The network, and listen, ESPN has a contract to play all these bowl games, but the bowl games don't really mean anything. Really, if you were going to open it up,
they mean
you'd
nothing.
have like yeah, right. But my point is, if you were to really open it up, for football, you'd have a tournament of like 32 teams in the playoffs, and that would be it. And like really have a real tournament of some sort, or 16 teams. I don't know what the number is in college football, but you do it for money. You have these meaningless bowl games Like even the college football season. The college football season is extended. I remember when college football was only like 11 regular season games, and if you were lucky, you had one tournament game, and one game for your conference tournament, and that was it. You played one bowl game. Now it's like 13, 14 regular season games. You get a conference tournament game, and then you get now 2 playoff games. You get the semifinal game and the championship game if you win the BCS. So you're talking about a season that starts for like 16, 17 games. And, if you're a college football fan, in a lot of parts of the country, your season actually starts in April because spring practices start because everybody out in these places. So that's what they want. And yeah, my buddy Atomic yes, I did see that EA college football is returning. I listened to one podcast, forget where it was, and they were talking about like, how do you screw up, 25 EA college football. I mean, we'll have to find out. The devil's in the details. But let me come back to a few more comments. Must have slipped his mind, but Rob actually got to see Willie Mays play on the Black Barons. Are we talking about the Negro Leagues? That what we're talking about? You that old? I thought Bobby Tats was old, but I guess you're older. I mean, I love Bobby, but like Bobby sounds like he's got to be like 75.
Do I honestly look like I'm 75?
No, I wouldn't say you're 75, but I mean, Joe Dell ain't far behind you, though. Joe Dell hit 50. He's 51 now, so he's, coming up the rear view mirror. So, he's, I saw him on TikTok the other day. He's got white hair, not black hair anymore, I saw the white hair, it's getting tough there. Let me get to a few more comments. Yes, I did see that, and I did see, first of all, that they are doing now the tournament. It's actually starting through Turner. Turner actually has a couple of the games they bidded and won these extra teams to play in the BCS. And there's a lot of money involved. I tend to think it's going to grow eventually to 16, maybe even, I don't know what the number is to kind of be as a requisite, but college football is going to be, it's added game. Cause again, it's money. It's about, look at the deal that Turner paid for those. I think it's 2 games they're getting. They actually paid almost as much money for that than it was the NBA deal. They're looking at, obviously, the NBA deal hasn't been called still, and they paid that much money for. And Nashville could get an MLB team. We got the Nashville Sounds. Obviously, the NHL team, the Predators, have, what an offseason. They had Steven Stamkos they just signed, and he's been a fan of the Braves because he's out in Lafayette, Tennessee. And I guess it's weird because in Tennessee, you don't have a Major League Baseball team. So your team, I guess by design, based on locality, would probably be the Braves. I mean, I think based on the market, if you're in Tennessee, I guess some people might say maybe you'd be a fan of the Reds, but I think you're probably the Braves is where you'd probably be most likely to be a team. Maybe Texas, but Nashville MLB team. I think it'll be interesting to see what MLB does in expansion. I mean, obviously we know, quote unquote, Oakland, I guess, is going somewhere. I guess they're supposed to go to Vegas, but they're supposed to go to Sacramento first, and like a 9,000 seat stadium or 10,000 seat stadium. We've talked about that like a dead horse. And there's Charlotte, North Carolina gets talked about a lot. San Antonio, Texas has got enough teams already. Don't they have enough teams? They got the Rangers, they got the Astros. Just put every team in Texas, I suppose. But I love college football. The atmosphere is amazing. I'm even happy. Yeah, the game hasn't been back. I think that's going to be the most interesting thing. I think I've always enjoyed college sports. For those that may or may not know, that's really where I cut my teeth into kind of getting my exposure, is covering college sports, especially college basketball and college soccer. So, I actually did one interview years ago with we had the head coach at the time for the Wagner Seahawks, and that was, Jason Hotaling, and, the Wagner Seahawks, which are a Division I football team here. They play not too far from where we live, but they're almost like the equivalent of like the, the Washington Generals in basketball. They're basically a joke. They're a Division I team, but they pretty much they haven't put a good product on the field in years. And for those that may remember, their biggest product is a guy, Rich Kotite, who famously, or not so famously, coached the New York Jets. He's from Staten Island, but that's a different conversation for a different time. So, those are some things. Let me ask you guys this before we get to closing thoughts. In general, Yankees, Mets, and in baseball, I'll ask a two-pronged question for you, Chris. What are you watching for the Yankees here this next week, and maybe a story or two across Major League Baseball?
Well, I think with the Yankees, I mean, obviously they're playing Boston. They need to win these next 2 games. You can't lose another series, especially, heading into the All-Star break. You can't lose to Boston here at home after getting swept by the Reds. They got to bounce back. They got to figure it out. I know they got injuries. Every team deals with injuries. So that shouldn't be the excuse why this team can't get going and can't win some games. So for me, I mean, this is gut check time, right? This is Boston at home. You gotta get it done. I think Cole starts tomorrow. So you got to get this win to get the team, back on track somehow. I don't know what it's going to take, but they got to get it done. It's as simple as that. Like I said, moves got to be made. Something, bring somebody up from AAA. Something's got to happen. So from that side, and then from the other side, I think the storyline, I think this week is going to be who's going to fall out. Like we were talking about it with the playoffs, who's going to start to fall out of the playoff race and who's going to start to sell. Because I think right now, I think it's a game of, I don't want to say chicken, but who's going to blink first? Like who's going to go out there and say, okay.
You've been talking about it on your show. I've heard Bobby and Donald talk about it on the Pinstripe Chronicle, which is on our internet radio station, where you can check out all the shows if you want to listen to it. It's a 24-hour radio station. But yeah, I mean, you guys have been talking about that. And I mean, I think you've seen things break a little bit. I think teams have obviously gotten over 500 a little bit. But yeah, I mean, as I stated at the beginning of the show, I'm looking at teams like Detroit. I'm looking at teams like the Cubs, even though they got to win.
Yeah.
I'm looking at teams like Cincinnati. Where does Cincinnati go in this? What about Toronto? Toronto's got a lot of questions. I think that those are teams.
That's another team.
Yeah, but you got free agents. You're in a big market. They like to spend money there now. And, do you wave the white flag? And, what do you do there? You've been trying to win there. And this core that they've had in Toronto, I think it's so fascinating because you've had this core, but you haven't had a single. You have had 2 playoff appearances and no playoff victories to show for it. I mean, that's you had
and they've changed players. Around them, they've changed managers, and they're getting the same results.
Right.
So,
yeah, 3 playoff appearances the last 4 years, but no playoff victories.
Yeah, I think it's time to think about trading either Guerrero or Bichette or maybe both. They might have to.
Especially after you struck out in the offseason. You were really looking for that big fish. You were really looking for somebody.
They wanted Ohtani, right? They were trying to get Ohtani.
They had him. They thought they had him, and they couldn't come through with that. And, you've lost some players. You haven't quite brought the right people in. And, teams like Baltimore have passed them. Obviously, Gunnar Henderson, TBK mentioned what a story this year, 27 home runs. Just, I mean, this young man is just, he's one of the most exciting players in baseball. I think another story to watch, Mike Trout comes back. What do you expect from him at this point? He's supposed to come back. I mean, we'll have to see a lot of different stuff. I'd be curious. Again, on Toronto is a good one. For you, Rob, though, I mean, 1 or 2 things you're watching with the Mets between now and next Friday when we're back on the air, and just a story or 2 across baseball that you're looking at.
Well, they have 3 more games with Pittsburgh, so they got to. I hope they could win out 2 of those. Then they go home. Washington comes in. They got to take that series.
Washington, yep.
And then Colorado. They definitely have to take that series. If they lose to Colorado, I mean, then it's a disaster. Really.
And I think especially because you got a lot of road games in the second half. Don't forget, this team played a lot of home games.
Yes.
And you got to make these games up on the road. So you still got, road trips ahead. And you got teams, listen, Pittsburgh, you're going to be a contender. You got to beat Pittsburgh 2 of these next 3. Washington, you got to give them some payback. Colorado, that team is going to lose 110 games. You got to go out and take care of business here between now and next Sunday when we go to the break. You got to be able to go out and, win these games, no question.
Definitely. And Diaz is coming back. Senga is going to be coming back. So let's see how, what happens with those guys. And they just have to win series. They have to do what they did in June. In July.
Which is ironic because if you think about it, the Mets' Achilles heel, what has the Mets' Achilles heel these last several years been? June. The Mets have been, historically horrific in June. We go back to the Callaway years, obviously. We saw last year what this team went through in June. This is a team historically that's swooned in June, whereas the Yankees, it's kind of been lately, maybe August and July, but for this Met team, it's actually been June. And the Mets had a actually really good month of June. And that's kind of why this Met team, we're even talking about them. Last time we were on the air on Sportswire, we were looking at them maybe being, sellers. Definitely. What do you do with Alonso? But, you had a great month, and, that's obviously why they're here. But I think other stories for the Mets to look at, just real quick. McNeil has had an atrocious season. I mean, you could not ask for more of an atrocious season. Obviously you talked about Beatty earlier in the year. I think obviously, you're looking at, Lindor has had kind of a Lindor year. The batting average is low, but, home runs and RBIs are there. Martinez is a big chip. If you're going to stand pat, you're obviously counting on him to continue to deliver. Obviously, Bader, has been okay for them. Marte, talked about him, his issues. That's been a constant these last 2 years and why this team has struggled. We talked about, Alvarez lately getting hot. Alonso, we know what we expect there, and we'll see. I mean, it's obviously a lot to look forward to. Vientos has gotten hot. Our buddy Ernest Dove's got to be really happy about that. Yeah. But let me get to a couple things here before we move on. Saw the Jets lose to the Oilers 46-3 at Giant Stadium in a lightning storm during the Rich Kotite era. Boy, that's got to be way back during the time machine. But then again, most of Rich Kotite's games as Jets coach were losses, right? Because wasn't he like 4-28 as the Jets head coach? So there wasn't really much to write home about. But a lightning storm, boy, that's pretty pitiful. But hopefully the Jets don't have as many pitiful moments this year, because obviously they've put a lot there. But that's pitiful. And you stayed at the game. Were you concerned you were going to be struck by lightning? Almost reminds me of the Ozzy song, Lightning Strikes. Was it Lightning Strikes? I think was from, Ultimate Sin? Ultimate Sin. I did like that album, but I don't think
Aerosmith has a song too, Lightning Strikes.
Yes. Yeah. That was in their era on drugs. That was when they were really good. I didn't like them.
Rock in a Hard Place.
There that you
album,
go.
No Joe Perry, no Brad Whitford.
Yeah, that was I think that's the one that Minka Kelly's father played guitar. I think Rich Dupay, something like that. But that was the one. Yeah, I did like Aerosmith. Not as much when they were like "Dude Looks Like a Lady" and "Ragdoll" and "Love in an Elevator." But that's what pays the bills. Kind of like Sportswire, right? I might want to talk more baseball, but Backyard Underground Wrestling. I love Backyard Underground Wrestling. I love baseball. We mix them both in. Just got the W. Orioles got the win. Team looks great, but my hope is that the baby bird excuse doesn't come back to bite us again this year. Division titles are great, but I need a World Series win in my last time. What I talked to you about it, 1983 is the last time the Orioles went to the World Series. That's kind of is hard to fathom because, the Orioles were a premier team in the 60s and 70s.
I think that was Ripken's second year, right?
Yep. And they probably thought they're going to win like 4 more World Series afterwards. Yeah. He's the best player in the game. And, they struggled really. I mean, up until in my lifetime, I only know the Orioles winning a couple of years here and there, really. Showalter had some good years and had a couple of good years with Davey Johnson. And the rest of my really memories of the Orioles up until these last 2 years have been not much, But then again, I'm a Mets fan. Pretty much the same thing. The Mets are good like every 6 years. That's pretty much that. They cleared the field and a bolt hit the side of the stadium. Boy, that's a rather painful existence. That's a painful existence. Yeah, that's kind of how I would say about the Jets' existence. Well, you know what? Obviously, I could see we're obviously getting to the finish line. Let me get to some closing thoughts. I'm going to go with you, Chris, first. Good to see you once again. Hope you continue to feel better. Look forward to hopefully next week. And anything else you want to plug, share, or say, I'm going to put up your social media while we get ready to sign off. And the floor is yours, my friend, and be my guest.
Thank you, Tom. Rob, it was great to see you guys again. Like I said, worst loss of the season for the Yankees. First
up 3-1, you got to win that game. Yep.
Yeah, so they got to come back and win these next 2 against Boston. And Cashman's on the clock now. He's got to make some moves. Something's got to happen to the Yankees because this team right now is dead. So they got to figure it out. And we'll be talking about it. We're probably going to do the podcast a little later next week. I'm out for a couple of days, but I'll probably get it to you on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think you gave it to me Tuesday this week. I got a Tuesday. Which was good.
Yeah, I think Patrick was out for a couple of days. So that's him. Now this week I'll be out a couple of days. But
yeah, it's that time of year. It's July. Weather, family, vacation. You got to enjoy it. Because in New York we don't get these these beautiful days like this too often. I'm already thinking about now we're losing 1 minute of light now. It's like, oh boy,
Exactly.
I know I heard my brother say, "Oh, football! I can't wait. How many weekends till football?" And I'm saying the other way. I'm like, man, I'm missing it because all my stars in the backyard and the underground. When you're a backyard wrestler, you really only have good weather up until October. If you're lucky in some parts of the country, like Atomic Tight, maybe you can push till November. But really, we're kind of now in the middle of the backyard and underground wrestling season, especially if you're wrestling outdoors. If you're really, it kind of mimics the baseball season. Maybe some places it's a little earlier than others you can start, but it makes me sad, but we'll certainly get through it. And great stuff. And I look forward to hearing the Talking Rivals later in the week. We'll play it alongside the Pinstripe Chronicles. And Rob, going to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. I'm going to change the hockey line change and put up the your Twitter and X, whatever they call it now. And I want to give you the floor while I do that. And the floor is yours. And fire away, my friend.
Thanks. Good to be with you, Chris and Tom. Fun tonight. Sometimes I like when it's, the three of us talking baseball because it's just like we're, three friends talking baseball.
Yeah, it was a good. I tell you what, I enjoy it. I got to be honest. There's people that want me to talk 24 hours a day. It's funny because people, they really enjoy what we do here on Sportswire, and I can't thank enough the people. We had about almost 7,000 views on YouTube, and we're actually pushing almost 1,000 subscribers, and a lot of that has really been the overwhelming support of the wrestling community. But a lot of them even say, I like to see you do 24 hours and talk about different things. We try to mix it up, but obviously there's it's something that we're so ingrained to, and it's obviously we enjoy it. The wrestlers give so much to their time to this platform, and they do so much for us in this sport. And they're all wonderful people, despite what you might hear on and off the air, but they do so much, and they've been invested for us, and I enjoy their products so much, and I'm a wrestling fan in general, and it's a great obviously relationship that we have with all the great companies. But it's fun to talk baseball and other things. But you might get your wish, 24-hour stream, you might get one of these days, because people are like, when we get to 1,000 subscribers, that's what they want. I don't know. Maybe we'll have you guys fill in. Maybe you guys can interview the wrestlers. Maybe you guys can talk to them. Maybe we'll get more subscribers. You guys can talk to them. Maybe that'll be the way to go going forward. But yeah, baseball is a fun thing. I like talking the other sports. And, we are a sports station. We have an internet radio show link. And I think we'll definitely mix some more of it on Fridays. I think it's something that we'll continue to do and continue.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to talking to TBK about the Orioles too.
They're a hot story right now. They're the team that I think a lot of people are looking at. Maybe this is the team could win a World Series finally.
Yeah, but anyway, real quick, the Mets just have to do, like I said before, what they did in June: win ball games. They got to fix that bullpen. Keep hitting. That game in Washington, they had one hit. That was embarrassing.
The Thursday. Oh my God. I was watching it was the early game.
That was the
too
11
o'clock. Yeah, it was crazy. It was like 11 o'clock, but that's Washington for you, the 11:05 game.
But anyway, so it was fun, and I'm looking forward to talking to the rest of the guys. And
Randy's going to be back. I think Randy's actually on assignment. He actually will be back next Friday. We'll get the wrestling guys to open it up because I don't have a guest on Friday. So we'll keep that open. We'll have, Randy will be back. We'll have Alan Michaels will be back. Shane Davidson, Armageddon Shane Davidson. They'll be here for the wrestling side, and we'll see what else. Maybe Justin, we'll see. But Randy will be back, and I'm sure TBK will be back down the road. And, we'll definitely keep it open for Fridays. And I'm looking forward to that. If you want to follow Rob, that's his X at R Maraska. Chris is at CP7NY. And Chris is also on Threads as well on Instagram. Rob is on Facebook. And definitely check the guys out. Thank you, Joe Dell. So happy birthday to Joe Dell again. I hope that he is going to enjoy the next 51 years of his life. I want to thank everybody that's tuned in. And if you haven't yet, check us out on YouTube and also Sportswire Radio 6579 and via the Listen Live button on sportswireradio.org. And I'm looking forward to more talk from you guys and, everything else in between. And also we'll be here later this evening and we'll have Money in the Bank coverage as well. One more time, if you're on sportswireradio.org later this weekend, you can hear the interview that the Squared Circle guys had. That was a real treat that they were able to get WWE announcer and commentator Byron Saxton. Byron Saxton, of course, a guy 17-year veteran WWE, and he spoke to our guys here on this platform. Really, really cool thing that we got a chance to see here on Sportswire Radio. So make sure you tune into that. Also, make sure you check these guys' podcast out on Spotify, LinkedIn, everything else in between. Gentlemen, good to see you guys. We're looking forward to next week's show. Feel better, Chris. I hope you enjoy your trip. Rob, looking forward to more coverage on the Mets and more. And we'll see you guys. Have a great weekend. Stay cool. And let's see what the Mets and Yankees can do and hopefully get back on track.
Sounds good.
All right, that was Chris Bizet and Rob Maraska. Rob Maraska, the longest tenured analyst on Sportswire Radio's history, also the Grim Reaper, quote-unquote, of Sportswire Radio. Sadly, we spoke about a death in Willie Mays, but Willie Mays had a great life, and I don't think that people are going to be sad about his memory. We're going to all remember that. And also Chris Bizet, host of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals. You can see that on sportswireradio.org throughout the week. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice, figuratively and literally, where all wrestling matters. And if you're on Sportswire Radio, you're going back to your regular scheduled programming, and I'll be back here throughout the weekend. And until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. I want to thank everybody here for tuning in. Thank our old friend DG Colt, also TBK of the Be More Talkative podcast, Michael Blackheart, XCW wrestler, Twitch streamer, my hardcore king, Atomic Titan, the legendary Joe Dell, and everybody else that was out there that is tuned in. And I'll see everybody in a little while on Sportswire Radio, the number one